On the next Prairie Sportsman, a bass tournament near Wabasha raises over $1 million for the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Plus, explore cutting-edge advances in controlling Minnesota's aquatic invasive species. And we'll join Nicole Zempel for a fast forage. Welcome to Prairie Sportsman. I'm Bret Amundson. We got a great show for you, starting right now.
Funding for Prairie Sportsman is provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien on behalf of Shalom Hill Farm, a retreat and conference center in a prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota, on the web at shalomhillfarm.org. Live Wide Open. Western Minnesota Prairie Waters. And the members of Pioneer PBS.
The Mississippi River, it flows from Lake Itasca to the Gulf of Mexico, and the fishing can be fantastic. And anglers from all over the U.S. have descended upon this small Minnesota town in the driftless region to target bass this weekend. But their main reason for being here is much bigger than that.
To be honest with you, this is probably one of the most amazing things you can just be a part of.
Oh man, it's such a cool event.
That's incredible. It doesn't even make sense.
This is just a great event to raise money for a cause that is, it's undescribable.
This event is the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic, which has been raising money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for 25 years now. But it's not structured like your typical charity tournament.
To get in the tournament, there's a $350 entry fee. We do have a fundraising minimum of $500. And, you know, years ago, that was brought up at the committee before I was involved. And it was kind of a hot button issue. And they thought, gosh, we're going to lose all these teams because they don't want to raise $500. And all of a sudden, the fundraising dollars kept going up and up. Well, then we added an accelerator, I believe, in the 20th year of the tournament to have $20,000 first place prize. Well, what we did there is not only did you have to meet the $500 fundraising minimum, but you also had to raise $5,000 for the accelerator for it to go from $5,000 first place to $20,000.
Over the years, the fundraising efforts have evolved, and right now, they have a model that's working well, all thanks to Dick Hiley.
Dick was the first person that really chose to not only raise money for St. Jude by paying his entry fee, because when this tournament started, there was a portion that would go to St. Jude's from the entry fee. Well, Dick was the first person to raise money on his own outside of that, just by asking people, hey, we're raising money for St. Jude, would you like to be a part of that? That's kind of what started getting us where we are here today with the fundraising minimum. We're all competitive as anglers. I mean, that's what we do. We go out there and try to beat each other catching the most fish, but in this tournament it's a little bit different because we're trying to raise more money than the next person. And that is really what has taken this from, again, the first year, $11,000 fundraising event, which went to St. Jude 25 years ago, to $1 million this year.
Yep, you heard that right. Anglers raised over $1 million for St. Jude this year.
I mean, I was around when we hit $1 million cumulatively, and I think that was the 14th year. And then like they started shooting for these big numbers, like we're going to try to do 500,000 next year. And it's like, man, this seems impossible. And then now here we are, you know, we did $1 million in 14 years. And then now 10 years later, we did $1 million in 1 year.
Your boat order is not going to be a draw like most fishing tournaments, where if your boat won today, you're going to be boat 76 tomorrow. No, it's going to be based on how much money you raise. That is really what engaged all the anglers, and there are a lot of guys that, were in the 40s, 50s, 60s in the boat number, and they were sick of that, and they decided, you know what, I'm going to put my effort into the fundraising, and all this, sudden they're raising $5,000, $10,000.
Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Get ready for day one, folks. Stay safe. We'll see you back here this afternoon, 24:55 it. Good luck. Y'all catch them up.
Every pool is a little different. Pool 4 has Lake Pepin. So the lake holds a lot. It has weeds, it has rock, it has points. It doesn't have as much current as like the regular river channel does. Pool 5 has a lot of river channel, a lot of backwaters, a lot of points, a lot of wing dams, sand drops. They have a wide variety for bass. And then they have Weaver, which is a big weed lake that has channels through it and has a tremendous population of both northerns, panfish, and largemouth and smallmouth. Wing dams are a big key right now. They hold smallmouth, they hold largemouth, they hold walleye and northern, and they hold panfish. The Mississippi River is probably one of the most fertile bodies of water around, period. They have a phenomenal walleye and sauger population, and the growth rates are phenomenal. Bass are the same way. Largemouth, smallmouth bass are second to none anywhere.
Swift moving water, a lot of current, a lot of backwater, a lot of smallmouth. Like this time of year, man, we had guys weighing in bags, all bags of smallmouth, all bags of largemouth, a lot of mixed bags. It's a unique fishery. It really is. There's a little bit of everything here. It'll be an exciting day right here. All right, here we go, man. Team number 56, Mike Keys and Tim Domeo. Mike's 11th year with us, Tim's 15th year with us. These guys raised $11,520. Hey, how you doing? Wonderful, how are you? Oh, we're doing good. You got a 6-fish limit? No, we had 5. You got 5 fish, okay.
I was pretty confident going into today that we would have done rather well. And I think that water dropping 5 degrees from yesterday put them in a little bit of a negative mood. It's one thing to be competitive and to fish the tournaments and want to do good and win the money, but for me, it's all about, raising money for the kids.
Team number 39, Sean Bergsrud and Wyatt Stout, second year fishing the tournament. These guys raised $12,330 this year. Team number 36, you guys raised $9,275. Team number 61, $22,670. This is wild, like it's just saying 10,000, 14,000, 20,000. These guys just raising this money. It's incredible, man. It truly is.
It's a great event, and I think this year they've raised over $1 million that they've given back to St. Jude. And being a patient there, we know, what that means. Ryan's a former patient at St. Jude. He was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 8 years old, around 2013, 2014.
I mean, it's a very hard and arduous process going through there, but they try and make your life as comfortable as you can, and the They pay for your bills. They pay for everything. Our bill would have came out to be around $2 million, but St. Jude paid for it. They paid for it, and that relieves a lot of stress off of the families.
Like Ryan said, they just took care of everything, and they're just it's such a wonderful organization. But, you know, they rely on donations, and that's why this event is so important. Is, you know, these bass fishermen are out there, and they're raising money, and families, you know, like myself and other families are just grateful for that, because we couldn't afford that kind of treatment.
And everybody said St. Jude's is the happiest place on earth. Well, how can it be the happiest place on earth when there's little kids there that are fighting for their life? Well, the way that the hospital is designed, it really is. It's incredible. There's so many things that I really can't tell you about. You know, just from the way that they decorate the hospital, it's not white. It's not boring. There's colors everywhere. There's stuff on the walls. Everything is at a child's level. Drinking fountains, you know, check-in counters. And so when the kids get there, they feel welcome.
I've never shared my story about my battle with my family's battle with childhood cancer. So I was 9 years old. I was diagnosed with leukemia. We didn't have St. Jude. It tore us up, man. Like me getting cancer, it devastated. Like the family dynamic was stressful. Making how you go pay for this? How you go? You're trained to do everything, right? You're conditioned, pay your taxes, wash your face, brush your teeth. You're conditioned. You're brought up to do all these different things. Drive on the right side of the road. But one thing you're not taught is how to handle your kid getting diagnosed with cancer. So I saw what it can do to a family without the help of St. Jude, and so like that's why St. Jude is so special to me, because I see them alleviate that pressure. Their fundraising total this year is $25,024. Attaboy. Do we got a 6-fish limit?
Yeah, we got lucky. We only caught 6 all day. She's pretty tough out there.
It's fishing, man. We're fishermen. We want to catch it. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's one of the only times that you go fishing, you can shrug it off, because you're doing it for a different reason than just to bring home the chrome. You know what I mean? Folks, well, that is a wrap for day one of the 25th Dick Kiley St. Jude Bass Classic. 2263 is leading day one, and the Wenzel's Whopper leader is 528.
Every year we have a patient family here. We have a lot of success stories. You know, success stories are important. Every, I'd say about 5 years, we have a family that is not a success story. That is probably the driving force right there that, you know, reminds us of there's still a lot of work to do.
Dylan wants to have a career, get married, and someday have a family of his own. Your commitment to St. Jude means that he has the chance to do all these things and more. Thank you for all the ways that you support St. Jude. You guys are just amazing. To raise the money, not just for our family, but for everybody.
All right, so we talked about Little Surprise, right? We talked about Little Surprise. This event was supposed to happen in May. Something happened for you in May, too. Did you have a birthday in May?
Hey, Dylan, Kevin Van Dam here. You know, I heard that you're a huge fan, and I also got a little bit about your backstory. I know that you've been through a lot, and man, I definitely think and be praying for you, and I love that you love spending time on the water with your dad. So that is so awesome. Happy 19th birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
It really is a special event, and then it goes to, you know, St. Jude and the families, and I just can't begin to explain to you what that means to those people.
The 2023 25th anniversary Dick Kiley St. Jude Bass Classic officially raised and surpassed $1 million, raising $1 million. That's a long number, bro. $1,005,282 for the kids of St. Jude. Actually, let's come on. This year's total brings the 25-year tournament total to over $6.8 million for the kids of St. Jude. Incredible, man.
we've achieved our ultimate goal, which is raising money for St. Jude's, and we hit that $1 million mark, which is absolutely incredible.
Starry stonewort, for example, is a high-profile invader in the state. Suddenly, seemingly showed up in 2015 out of nowhere, and it's been found now in about 20 lakes in the state.
And you can see right now that it's going to seed.
The Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, MACIRC, was created in 2012. The University of Minnesota, the state legislature, and many stakeholders across the state came together and said enough's enough with this invasive species problem. We needed to develop science-based solutions to get ourselves out of it. There isn't a cooperative research center like this elsewhere in the country that's working on all four of these organismal groups, the fish, the plants, the invertebrates, and microbes all together, and supporting research to do that. And we've got dozens of species we're worried about here in Minnesota right now, and there are tenfold more on our doorstep that we're worried about coming in. They come in on the boats, they come in through the garden and aquarium trade. There's lots of pathways for introduction. So the value of having a center-based approach for a problem like this is it's just so incredibly complex and large scale. We bring together disciplines from across the university and stakeholders across the state, country, and around the world to help solve these problems. We have right now about 40 researchers that are affiliated with MACIRC. On campus, we have a pretty incredible research facility. It's a 10,000 square foot biocontainment laboratory.
We really try to balance very short-term finding solutions and tools in a couple of years with kind of what we refer to as moonshots. So longer-term investment in research that could have huge impacts over time. And one of those is exploring the zebra mussel genome and seeing if there are ways that we can kind of take advantage of zebra mussel genetics to knock back those populations.
Before MACIRC was established, there wasn't a PhD level scientist focusing on that species, which is pretty shocking considering the scale of the problem here in the state. What we have going on in these tanks are different life stages of zebra mussels. We're testing genetic control strategies to see if we can turn genes on or off. And if we can do that, then we can get them to do whatever we want. In this case, one of the first ideas is turning off the gene that expresses the byssal threads. So we have those little threads that the zebra mussels use to attach to things. And if we can prevent that from developing, they won't attach and they'll die. Native mussels don't have those genes, so this is a pretty species-specific strategy. So they can construct synthetic DNA, put that into algae, and then feed the algae to the zebra mussels. The zebra mussels will take it in, they'll die, and that'll be the end of it.
We have long-term research into management of common carp, which have a huge impact on water quality in the state. And some of those research tools that have been developed in that project over the last 4 years are now at a stage where we can start pushing them out.
Common carp are a big problem because they root around in the bottom, that's where they eat. And as they do that, they're resuspending the nutrients, the sediment, so you get these really nutrient-rich bodies of water that can never get cleaned because the carp are constantly stirring them up. So if you can control the fish, it cleans the water. And then native plants can recover, sport fish can recover, ducks can come back. What you can see on these carp, see those green, fluorescent green splotches? Those are genetically modified cells inside these carp. So we can insert a gene that fluoresces, turn the light off, they look normal, turn the light on, and you can tell which ones have the genetic insert. This is a research strategy to see if our tests are working. And as you can see here, so far so good. This is still very much a research-based experiment, laboratory-based research experiment. But what they have been doing here is raising these fish up from eggs, juveniles, to adults. Then they spawn them and start the cycle over. And at that egg stage is when they insert the genetic constructs that they're trying to test. The goal, long term, would be to cause the population to collapse out in the environment. The concept sounds pretty sci-fi in the invasive species management world, but this type of technology has been used for agricultural pests, vector-borne disease. The genetically modified mosquitoes are a similar premise as what we're trying here in the common carp. That's one form of genetic control. Another one would be the use of pathogens to control invasive species. So, for example, we have a virus that is highly specific to common carp. It's already here in Minnesota. It's highly lethal to common carp, and if there are ways to harness that virus to induce mortality events causing populations to collapse, that seems like a strategy worth looking into. And then there's predatory biocontrol. Could you release a predator or some sort of parasite or something to interrupt the life cycle? And there's different ways that that happens for different species. Those are questions that we're trying to think about and get answers to. Still a lot of questions, again, to think through on the regulatory and ethical side of things, but the technology development is going pretty smoothly.
As it is right now, there are no ways to completely eradicate a species, and so a lot of that research into prevention and early detection is really important in making sure that the problem doesn't get worse than the state.
When we look over time at new species coming into Minnesota, there seems to be a decline in how fast new things are coming. And I think it's a testament to how well the prevention programs are working. That said, with all of these things, we expect to be surprised. Starry stonewort, for example, is a high-profile invader in the state. Suddenly, seemingly showed up in 2015 out of nowhere, and it's been found now in about 20 lakes in the state. It wasn't on our radar, really. It wasn't here. It somehow slipped in. So, while we've got good programs, the door's still cracked, and we want to keep an eye on it.
Aquatic invasive species are impacting the state. Whether you are an angler, a hiker, a boater, invasive species are here and they are impacting our ecosystems. And while in the short term, we may not see those impacts, over time, if we don't address them, they will change the ecosystems that we're used to and will have impacts on the ways that people recreate in the state. It's really important, I think, to have a research center that's devoted just to invasive species, just because of the scale of the problem. Being able to focus resources and brain energy and people power on this one issue allows us to really move the ball forward quickly on finding solutions for invasive species in the state. After 10 years of research at MACERC, we now have tools and recommendations that have come out of research projects that we're ready to share.
There's lots of ways that the research moves out into the field. There could be methods or tools, technologies that are developed that just sort of roll out and are easily implemented by managers. We work really closely with the DNR. They're a central partner to the work we do. A private company could take that technology, license it, do whatever they need to do to get it out there as a product in the real world. In Minnesota, where we're blessed, we're a water-rich state, it's so core to our cultural values. When something comes in and disrupts that, that's who we are, that's what we care about, and this is something that's changing it. The world's a changing place. We're trying to change it for the better and try to get these species under control.
So we are sitting here next to a plant truly that is great to forage all 12 months of the year for different parts. This is curly dock, and you can see right now that it's going to seed, but interestingly, during the fall, they also produce a second showing of their greens, which are edible. So in the fall, you can forage for the curly dock greens, and also the seed, and also the yellow taproot during the fall to early winter, depending on ground freezing, can be dug, and that the root would be utilized medicinally. During the spring, when curly dock, the greens are just starting to emerge, those can be harvested and utilized as you would any other green. The stems, when young, are also edible, and apparently they are very good. I've never had the stems. I have had the greens. They are kind of a lemony, sort of citrusy flavor. Very good component in salads. Also, I like to boil them down. You can use them in like creamed soups, any way that you would use a green. And then with these seeds, you can harvest those, and then you can grind those up into dock flour, basically, and that can be used in different cooking dishes. So the curly dock, super fun plant, very easy to identify this time of year, right? Because these, what are normally kind of green flowers, have gone now to seed, and so they always stand out pretty well too in the winter, snow on the ground. Pretty easy to identify, but make sure when you harvest anything from the wild, whether it be, fungus or fruit or plant, make sure on your ID. And one thing I do want to point out, I have a dog and 2 cats, and curly dock is actually toxic to them, and so if you do have pets, just research also the things that you are foraging to make sure that if your animals do come in contact with it, it's not going to harm them. But this is the curly dock, a fun plant and one to harvest all 12 months out of the year.
Funding for Prairie Sportsman is provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien on behalf of Shalom Hill Farm, a retreat and conference center in a prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota, on the web at shalomhillfarm.org. Live Wide Open. Western Minnesota Prairie Waters. And the members of Pioneer PBS.